Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about who has rights to pleasure and sexual citizenship. In my research, this question is explored in relation to disability and disabled women. Because sexuality is socially tied to bodies that fit an ideal norm, and bodies outside of that norm are seen as less than, I wanted to see how disabled women's understanding of themselves as sexual is socially influenced. I interviewed 5 self-identified disabled women about their sexual lives and experiences, and they shared stories of societal pressures and personal interactions. Something that became clear in the stories was that not all disabled women are the same just because they are disabled women. These women come from a variety of racial, socioeconomic, and sociocultural backgrounds. So what were the main social understandings of disability and sexuality that were at work in the women's stories? Ableism, sexism, and resistance. But the way social language works to shape meaning is complicated. Among these women, there's a mix of visible and invisible disabilities, and this affects how social understandings of disability and gender play out. However, there were clear themes. The women spoke of feeling pressures that attempt to define them and who they should be. Ableism often places blame on disabled women for being flawed in some way. Disability in an ableist space is not seen as sexual, and the women pointed this out with concern. They also spoke about the emotional labor they're forced to take on in relationships influenced by ableism, so having to explain their disability or manage others' emotions around disability, the pressure to always put others' needs first. This links to sexism's enforcement of ideal body image, as well as the sexist expectations of women when it comes to sex. In resistance to these pressures, a movement emerged that challenges mainstream notions of disability and sexuality. The women stated that this resistance represents their reality. It represents strength, commitment, pride, and reclamation. This resistance makes space for the diversity of life and the expression of voice, confidence, liberation, and solidarity. It's a movement of people who no longer wish to subscribe to oppressive thought. The women spoke about feeling more empowered and autonomous in their sexual lives and feeling their self-worth rising. They spoke about the freedom they feel to express themselves now, to talk about their sexuality and to own that, to claim their rights to pleasure and sexual citizenship. So, let's talk about sex. But let's make sure that when we do, we make space for diverse perspectives, and we acknowledge the rights of disabled women, like the ones in this research, to be in those spaces and to have their voices heard. Thank you.